Good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter Show with Knoxville, Nate, and Big Joe coming to you on another Thursday, even although a very steamy Thursday in the middle of a very steamy week. Um, Not much going on the field, even in baseball, where it was the All-Star game week. So they're getting back into action tonight. But some off-the-field action. And, of course, we have to talk about Jimmy G getting his freedom to finally make a deal that everybody's been waiting for him to make. And Kyler Murray moving into the ranks of the big boys with the big bucks. But before we get there, Nate, I want to spring something on you because I'm watching. I wasn't going to watch this, but the other night, in fact, it was last night, there was nothing else on. And I was watching the new Derek Jeter, the captain documentary. He's got one like Brady had one. Everybody's trying to get on like the Michael Jordan thing. Not really wanting to like it. It was pretty good. It wasn't that bad. But I'm a Yankee detractor. And one of the things for a couple of things that struck out to me, I don't know if you know this, but the Cincinnati Reds could have drafted Jeter as a replacement for Barry Larkin and didn't do it. And
Yes.
and that would have been, I mean, you're talking about a perfect replacement for Barry Larkin. Both of them, I would look at it made me do it, look up at their stats. And outside of the fact that Derek Jeter played about 600 more games than Barry Larkin, their stats are almost identical.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's two Hall of Fame players right there. The question is, though, if he does get drafted by Cincinnati, does he stay there, his entire career? Probably not. As baseball moved along and as the Reds have moved along, in case you haven't noticed, the Reds don't keep anybody anymore.
True.
The only player that they've really hung on to for an extended period of time is Joey Votto. Anybody else that's worth any type of money or demands any type of multi-million-dollar contract, they ship them out or let them, get bought off. Now, this was, 1993 was Jeter's rookie year, so maybe he would have stayed for a while. But I could just see at the end of his career, the Reds not wanting to pay him and getting rid of him. So I think for the Reds' sake, it would have made perfect sense and would have not only solidified the position for years to come and given them a second Hall of Fame shortstop in a row, but for Jeter's career, I think it was best for him. I mean, look at this guy. Could anybody else have handled being a superstar in New York any better than Jeter? I mean, I don't think so. The guy could handle the pressure. He could handle the media. He could handle the chicks thrown at him.
Yeah.
He just, whether you like the guy or not, and I'm not even, granting my opinion here. I'm just saying I think it's a fact that I don't know if anybody could have handled the New York City star persona any better than Derek Jeter did.
Now you have to go back to like the 70s of the guys like Tom Seaver and Walt Frazier and maybe even Broadway Joe if you want to give him a little bit of that. But, guys that really love the limelight, Mark Messier with the Rangers, a couple of guys, you can mention. But it's true. He had no scandals. I mean, he never got into real trouble. The one thing I did look, when I was looking at his stats that I found, and it is a question I wanted to bring up when I saw the stats for you, because it's so hard to quantify this. We all talk about players with the clutch gene, the guys who do the best on the biggest stages and everything. The funniest thing about Jeter is if you look at he played in 158 postseason games, which is 4 games short of
a season.
Regular season regular season amount of games. And his stats in the postseason mirror his average 162 game averages perfectly. So my question to you is does he get too much credit for being clutch, or is he clutch because this shows that the biggest limelight didn't make him wilt? Which side would you come down on that coin?
I would come down on the coin that he definitely stepped up in the clutch. I think he kept his consistency. A lot of guys, they wilt in the playoffs when the money's on the line. It's lose or go home in some instances, and they just the pressure gets to them. or the law of averages get to him or whatever. But for my money, seemed to always come up with the big hit. When the Yankees needed a big hit, he did it. If they needed a big play at shortstop, he was able to complete it. This is a guy to me who, yeah, the numbers don't tell you the whole story, in my opinion. I mean, numbers are great. Stats are awesome for going back and, seeing what somebody's done over a period of time. But my memories stick out to me that when I go back and look at, think about his career, in a big time playoff series or in a World Series game, when they needed somebody to get on base, they needed somebody to drive somebody in, they needed someone to get a hit. He seemed to always do it and always come through. I mean, just think about that game where he was trying to get his 3,000th hit, and everybody was, making a huge deal about it. All the cameras were there. There's so much pressure on him, and what does he do? He hits a home run for his 3,000th hit. So that just kind of to me personified, who he was. And numbers aside, this guy is a great player who never seemed to shrink, whether the lights were on or off.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And like I said, I love the fact that it kind of validates the point that the big stage didn't bother him. The fact that he could produce consistently the same numbers in playoffs that he did in the regular season, and there's proof right there on the written page, which is phenomenal. A lot of people sit there and you'll have arguments over Joe Montana against Tom Brady. Jim Kelly in his days with Buffalo, what he did for 3 straight years, and who was the best of this and that. But this is factual stats right on the page, because Montana had 4 Super Bowl winning years, but then he was eliminated a couple of times, and maybe didn't play so well if we look back on all those games to find the ones he was eliminated in. So you never know. But anyways, when I saw that, I thought I'd bring that up to start us off. Before we get into the major things of tonight, and we might as well start out with Kyler Murray. I guess you don't have to win to get the big contracts. Deshaun Watson showed it, and now Kyler Murray showed it, that it's not about showing how you can lead a team to the next level as much as putting on a show.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the guy hasn't been bad. But I don't understand, once again, the timing of this. I mean, just because he scrubbed his social media of the Arizona Cardinals, we're going to go out and give him a contract like this. I mean, let's be 100% honest. Kyler Murray is not the second best quarterback in the league. I mean, he's just not. But right now, he's getting paid second most. $46.1 million makes him the second highest paid quarterback in the league, second only to the 2-time in a row MVP Aaron Rodgers. So, I don't understand where these numbers are coming from. I get it. The numbers are going up. But what has this guy done? I mean, he was the 2019 Rookie of the Year. But if you go back and look at him as a quarterback in 2020, he was 8-8 as a starter. Last year, he was 9-5 as a starter. I just, I don't see it. I really don't. And, the biggest thing is his falling off at the end of the season is really concerning to me. I mean, this guy's good. I think he's put up solid numbers. We just said stats aren't everything, but he has put up solid numbers. He's a good quarterback. He's gotten a little bit better each year, I guess you can say. But I don't know. I haven't seen the type of improvement that I would want to see if I was about to give this guy $230 million. I don't know. It used to be like you would have to win something. You would have to do something to get this type of money. But not anymore. I mean, if you think about it, overall, he's 22, 23, and 1 as a starter in this league. And, that's about average if you're checking the stats at home, folks.
And just to put this out there clear so people know, I suck at poker. but I would love to play poker against some of these professional owners because, you know, it's not like there's 1,000 places that Kyler Murray can go. You know, who's looking for a quarterback right now? Houston?
No, they're not. I mean, if they were looking for a quarterback, they would have already signed Jimmy Garoppolo. They would have been in the Baker Mayfield business. They would have drafted somebody. I mean, they're not. They're going with this guy Davis Mills. I mean,
Yeah.
whether that's right or not, they're going with him. So who really is in the quarterback business? Nobody that I know of.
My point, where do you go? Where do you think, who are you bidding against except yourselves right now? Because Kyler Murray, for whatever potential he has, and I know a lot of this we see in sports today, whether it be Zion Williamson and his contract, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, and them saying, well, in the short glimpses we've seen of him, if he does come back healthy, we have a generational player. You know, everything is on potential now instead of making them do things, and they're really killing the golden goose right now. And in the front office, they're not making these guys see if they can take it to the next level yet. I mean, even as much as I don't like the guy, at least Jerry Jones made Dak Prescott prove himself before he gave him the big money.
Yeah, no, he certainly did. I mean, he still really hasn't proved himself in the playoffs, but he's shown that he's a good quarterback. He's proved that he can win games, that he can get it done on the big stages in prime time and all. I mean, the Cowboys are in prime time every weekend, and he's handled the pressure well, and he's done a good job. But you know, like I just said, what has Kyler Murray done? He's been essentially a 500 quarterback for his career. I mean, he's shown flashes at times, especially at the beginning of the year. Each of the last two seasons, the beginning of the season, he's looked very good. But what these owners apparently don't understand is NFL teams watch film, right?
Right.
NFL teams have, you know, a game plan. They have a scheme that they employ for a certain period of time. If the scheme works, they'll stick with it, adjust it a little bit, add some things, subtract some things, so on and so forth. But what they do also is they watch a lot of tape and they see what other players are doing well or having success with, and then they
take that away from you.
And they scheme to stop that.
Right.
And that's what's happened the last two seasons. At the halfway point is these teams have the Cardinals have started to play these teams for a second time, or they've started playing these teams after they've got 6, 7, 8 games worth of film on the Cardinals offense. And they essentially shut it down. They've gone to this defense where they drop 7, 8 guys into coverage and basically dare Kyler Murray to throw it, and they don't let him run. And he struggled big with that. So he needs to prove that he can be a pocket passer and get it done when they're just playing a soft zone on him.
Yeah, the thing that's never appreciated in the NFL is the assistant coaches. It's not like the old time when you maybe had to. They've got assistant coaches for everything, and they're all football junkies. They all would spend 20 hours a day at the facility watching tape, scheming, coming up with different ways to do things. If they could, they'd be there 24 hours a day. They are football junkies, and if they're given time, if they see something that works against Kyler Murray, the next team's going to copy it. And then the next team's going to copy it. And then the next team's going to copy it. And that's how it always works in football. But it is crazy. Everybody just thinks that's why smart teams, like, you can't pick the Patriots because they totally just change everything up. But you watch the smarter teams, they don't come out and do the same thing every week. They change it, they tweak it, they try and do something different, throw something different at you. And that's how they're successful. And Kyler Murray, like I said, he does. Sometimes he doesn't seem to change.
Yeah, I don't really understand, like you said, why they felt like they had to do this right now. I mean, he had 2 more years on his rookie deal, right? I mean, or 1 more year, and then they have the 5th year option, which then they can also franchise tag him. So I really don't understand the timing of this. It's dangling the carrot in front of the rabbit. I mean, now this guy's got the money. Why is he going to bust his ass now? Just, he hasn't really shown himself to be the most motivated human being on the planet. And now that he's got 100 and what was it, 60 million guaranteed, it's going to be tough to get him to, be real fired up about, proving himself. I mean, it takes a specific, certain kind of person to want to be the best. And, it's one thing to, want to be the best no matter what. It's another thing to want to be the best after you've already gotten, your guaranteed jack.
And like you said, Pat Mahomes, what is Pat Mahomes worth? And when Pat Mahomes gets his money, is Kyler Murray going to go back and try and get them to rip up this contract and give him more?
Well, Pat Mahomes has already got his money, and Kyler Murray just got more than him. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is making $45 million a year now.
Oh, is he? I didn't know. I didn't get it.
Yeah, he signed a huge contract. It was like a 10 to 15. I'd have to look at the exact deal to remember, but it was almost absurd the amount of years. But I understand it with Patrick Mahomes. He's won a Super Bowl. He's gone to another Super Bowl. He's proven to be one of the best players in the league. He's an MVP caliber quarterback. Pay him whatever the hell he wants. Kyler Murray, not so much.
What's Josh Allen going to get down the line? What's Lamar Jackson going to get down the line? The other thing about Kyler Murray in his own division, you got Matt Stafford, who's a better quarterback than him, and now has a Super Bowl ring. And I don't see he's gonna get the Cardinals to leapfrog over the Rams.
Yeah, Josh Allen just got paid too. He is now making, let me think, I believe it's like $43 million a year.
Jesus.
So Kyler Murray's making $3.1 million more per year than Josh Allen, who's taken his team to the conference championship game and been at the pinnacle of the sport and played also close to an MVP, if not an MVP level. Now you got this guy who's done absolutely nothing, who's making more per year than all these guys. He makes more than Deshaun Watson. He makes more than Pat Mahomes. He makes more than Josh Allen. Like I said, the only guy that makes more on average than Kyler Murray is Aaron Rodgers. And, those two guys' careers are completely different up to this point.
All right, and let's go out to the other guy. We've been worried about him all the whole winter, it seems. And now finally, and I'm telling you, I'm not impressed with John Lynch, especially a former player, for finally giving Garoppolo the chance to go out there and see if he can make a trade. I think it's classless of John Lynch and 49ers for a guy who, before he came to town, it was teetering whether Lynch was going to be thought of as a good GM and Shanahan was going to be thought of as a good coach. And then he comes over from the Patriots in the middle of the year. They rip off 6 straight wins, and all of a sudden they're looked at as a good team. And the next year he gets taken down by a knee injury. But then he's had him to a Super Bowl. He's had him to a conference championship. He's been a good citizen. No scandals with him. No problems with him. Even when they go out and they get Trey Lance, he doesn't make a big deal. And once they decided to go with the younger quarterback, I think that especially an ex-player like Lynch, should have done what he could to help Garoppolo.
Yeah, I agree with that, honestly. And they act like Jimmy Garoppolo's like 50 years old or something. The guy's 30 years old. We've seen how Tom Brady has played for 15 years after his 30th birthday. So I don't know why they're acting like this guy is ancient. I understand he's had a little bit of injuries, but as you mentioned, think about the 49ers, since 2018 or 2017 when he came on board. 2017, that first year, he played in 5 games and won all 5 of them. The following year, he got injured. The next year, he came back and was 13-3 as a starter. 2020 was the year that he got banged up, and they were pretty bad. I mean, I know they had some other injuries as well, but that quarterback position was really the place that they struggled. It didn't seem to matter who they put out there. I think they had C.J. Beathard, or however you want to pronounce it. They had Nicky Mullins. They ran both those guys out there along with a couple other guys and just couldn't get it done, whereas the rest of the team kept on rolling, but they just couldn't win without Jimmy G out there. And then you put him back out in the field last year. He managed to stay healthy for 15 games, was 9-6 as a starter, and led them to the conference championship game again. So I really don't get it. I mean, we're giving these guys that have done nothing, $40-50 million, but a guy who has actually proven to be a winner and has a record of 33-14 as a starter. He's treated like he's garbage and drafted over and then basically held hostage throughout the offseason.
Now, let me think. I'll tell you, I wouldn't mind seeing the Giants take a flyer on him if they could. But, I mean, you got Tyrod Taylor there. Maybe it's not the best place for Jimmy G. What do you think about Jimmy G at the Jets or the Giants?
Jets or the Giants?
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to end up either place. I mean, I think either one of those spots, I think Jimmy G would help, but I think the Jets are pretty much tied to Wilson, Zach Wilson at this point. I think they're gonna roll with him this year and see what he's got going on. And then behind him, I actually don't mind. Their depth is bad. They have the veteran and Joe Flacco who can kind of teach Zach Wilson what to do, and they've got Mike White who, has had some flashes in the pan. I mean, do I want to, bet my franchise on Mike White for the future? No. But he's had a couple games where he's looked pretty good. So I think the Jets are okay for right now at quarterback. I don't think they're going to be adding anybody, and certainly not a guy who's going to command, close to $25 million for the season. The Jets as well, the jury's still out, honestly, on Daniel Jones. I mean, whether or not they're going to make him their franchise quarterback or not, I'm guessing probably not. But my guess is they're going to roll with Daniel Jones this year. If he doesn't play well or he gets injured, they're going to put Tyrod Taylor out there, and then they're going to draft somebody else next year. So I think right now both teams in New York are set for this season at the quarterback position.
I tell you why I do, and maybe I read too much into this, but I do think he would be a better fit with the Jets. Is the 49er connection. Saleh knew him as the defensive coordinator when he was out there. The offensive coordinator was out there with him. I mean, Jimmy G, if Zach Wilson, I mean, remember one thing in this league, if I'm Robert Saleh, and I like Robert Saleh, is, and the Jets especially are not known for patience with quarterbacks. So, or coaches, I should say. And to have a guy sitting in your bench that very, very well, and it has, as you said, proven to be a winner, wouldn't be a bad thing to have in my back pocket, I think, if I was Robert Saleh.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that the Jets would benefit from having on the roster, yes. But I think, he's leaving and wants to leave the 49ers because he wants to be a starter. So I think, honestly, neither one of those places are set up for him to be the starter this year. I don't think it would be a bad idea for him to go somewhere this year, be a backup, let the shoulder heal up and take over as the starter next year. But, he could do that at San Francisco and stay put. So I would think if he's moving, he wants to be the guy.
Well, then you're looking at Seattle. I hear Atlanta's getting into the sweepstakes a little bit. Maybe, I guess they're not totally sold on Mariota. But, he was only going to be a stopgap anyways, most likely. We already talked about the Houston situation. So like we said with Kyler Murray, there's not very many places to go outside of Seattle and maybe Atlanta.
Well, not at this point. That's what I'm saying. Like granting him permission to speak to other teams now. Oh, thanks. After everybody's already solidified their quarterback spots, thank kudos to you for waiting until no one wants me. I mean, really, the only place that I could see him going in right now and becoming the starter is Seattle. I mean, I think he's better than anybody they have. I'm not sold on Drew Lock. In fact, I'm pretty down on him. He's had his chances and he's failed miserably. And Geno Smith is trash. So I think if he really wants to start this year, if the shoulder is really ready to go and, he's ready to, play football and throw the football 50 yards, I think Seattle's the best spot for him to go. It's just, I'm not sure whether Seattle's ready to make that move.
Or San Francisco will help a division opponent.
Even more so. I really don't know if they're playing him twice a year. Plus, they've got the Seahawks right now have $15 million in cap space. So they could make it work. Give him a huge signing bonus and make his salary, $10 million or less, so that they had a little wiggle room. They could do it. It's just, I don't know. I just don't believe the 49ers are going to trade him to, in division.
No, because then, especially, if Trey Lance turns into Trey Bust and you have to see him twice a year and potentially beat San Francisco twice a year and keep them out of the playoffs, it would not be a good look for Mr. Lynch or Mr. Shanahan there, in their football expertise, going away from a successful quarterback to an unknown personality. So we'll see what happens there.
But honestly, who else could they even talk to? I mean, they're like, oh, we're granting him his agent the ability to talk to other teams. Who else are they going to talk to? I mean, where else is he going to go? I mean, I don't understand.
Nowhere. And like you said, except if he was willing to take a backup role somewhere. One thing that comes to mind, if you're a good place for him to back up for a year, but would it help him? No, the Bengals. I mean, he'd be a good backup for Joe Burrow, but I mean, he'll never replace Joe Burrow, and he's not going to get enough action where he's going to be able to get a contract out of it. Detroit, you got Jared Goff there. It's the same story. Maybe he's a little bit better than Jared Goff, but Jared Goff is a bridge to a younger quarterback somewhere down the line. Justin Fields in Chicago.
But Chicago's in cap hell. I mean, that's the reason Chicago's in the position that they're in, is because they have no cap at all. In fact, they're getting rid of guys left and right. They're not signing dudes for this season. I mean, they're in a complete rebuild, and signing a 30-year-old quarterback who's got a salary of $24 million is just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no place for him to go. I mean, John Lynch screwed him.
He did.
In the worst possible way. John Lynch screwed him. He gave Jimmy G, who put his general managing career on a high pedestal, he gave him the screwing. And in a way, I would love to see San Francisco fall on their faces and see Lynch out. And I was never a big Lynch fan when he was a player. I know he's a great player, and I just thought he was a jackass. So if he ends up out in the street, I think it'd be funny.
Yeah, no, he was a badass. There's no doubt about that. He would pop the crap out of you coming across the middle.
Jackass.
But he was kind of a jackass, and he's kind of a jackass now. But this was a real jackass move. I mean, there was several teams that were wheeling and dealing and trying to get quarterbacks in place. I mean, think about it: Atlanta dealing Matt Ryan to the Colts. I mean, the Colts. I mean, they were without a quarterback. They got rid of Carson Wentz, and they were sitting there with nobody, trying to figure out what to do. I think they probably would have taken Jimmy Garoppolo.
I would say, look, Matt Ryan is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Okay, he's going into the Hall of Fame, and if you look at their careers, they don't match up. But Jimmy G is what, 5 years younger,
at least.
So you go with Jimmy G, who's been a successful quarterback. That would be a perfect place for him. First of all, being inside, so however bad his shoulder is, he doesn't have to worry about wind and rain and everything else. And secondly, they're a run-first team with a great stable of running backs, and he's a great play-action passer. That's his forte, is working with a running game. So that would have been the perfect spot for him. And again, thank you, John Lynch. Jimmy G, cross him off the Christmas card list.
Yeah, you're allowed to talk to teams now that everyone has a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, even Canada, the Canadian season's halfway over. Thanks.
Yeah, no, and what this really proves to me is that they're not sold on Trey Lance. I think they want Jimmy G to stay right where he is in case Trey Lance plays like garbage, and then they throw throw him back out there, I think is what they're hoping for, just in case things don't go well.
Well, another classless move by a classless, well, I can't say a classless team, but I mean, it is a classless move. All right, let's get the other free agents right now who are hanging around waiting to get picked up. I mean, we got camps opening up, and we got guys still out there. Let's bring it up. Who are the most intriguing names we got out there?
I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are still available. In fact, there's several guys that are, teams that are looking for example, left tackles. I mean, what are the most important positions in football? They're quarterback, left tackle, probably those two, and pass rusher. I mean, those are the three. And there's plenty. There's not any quarterbacks left, but there is a couple of left tackles. There is some pass rushers available. So let's talk about the tackles and the pass rushers. The only issue right now with some of these tackles that are available is their age.
Yeah.
You got Nate Solder. He played for the Giants last year. It wasn't horrible. I mean, let's be honest. This guy was able to start at left tackle for most of the season when they drafted a left tackle in, the top 5 picks the year before, and he beat that guy out and started at left tackle. So, what does Nate Solder have left in the tank? I'm not sure, but he's still out there. Another guy who is even a little bit older is Dwayne Brown from the Seattle Seahawks. Now, he just got arrested in LAX airport for having a gun on him, but maybe that was a misunderstanding. This guy's been an all-pro in this league for a long time. He may have a couple of years left. Jason Peters is also on the market. He's played guard. He's played tackle. He's a guy that can go out there and still get it done, even though, man, he's even older than those two guys. I think he's pushing 40 years old.
But wasn't he trying to retire a couple of years ago, Jason Peters?
Well, when he was injured, but he managed to get healthy, and he came back and, played for the Eagles and won a Super Bowl, and then, ended up coming back last year and playing most of the season. So this is a guy who loves football, and he's been able to get it done for a very, very long time. He's actually 40 years old. I think he actually ended up playing last year in Chicago because Chicago had all kinds of nightmares on the offensive line. So, he was getting ready to retire, and Chicago came a-calling, and now he's 40 years old, but the guy's in good shape. He played almost the entire season last year. He's not injured. That's a guy where I don't think he'll be signed right away because of his age, but if somebody goes down, I think that's a guy who may be called. I mean, can you think of a team right now that is short at the tackle position? Because that we just named Brian Balaga is also available. I mean, we just named 4 or 5 guys that could help somebody out if they need an additional tackle. Eric Fisher's another name who's out there, along with Darrell Williams from Buffalo. So there's several guys who are right there. Right for the picking.
I'll tell you, the Peters thing I would like if I was if I'm looking for some. You're always looking for depth on the offensive line, but he fills a couple of positions. If you have a young offensive line, he's a guy with a wealth of experience who could be kind of a quasi coach.
Oh yeah.
And help you out. So, I mean, right there, that's where his value comes in. If you have, anybody really, if I don't know if any of these guys you're looking for, nothing pops out in my head about a starting left tackle that they could fill right in some team that's really. What do you think? What team do you see that needs a starting left tackle right now?
I think most of these guys are probably going to be waiting for somebody to go down. But when I think about a team that could probably use some depth, I think about Pittsburgh and, all the trouble they've had on their offensive line. Right now, they've got Dan Moore Jr. slated to be their left tackle, Kevin Dotson at left guard, James Daniels at right guard, and Okorafor at right tackle. And not my favorite group. Now, they do have a little bit of depth there, but if somebody goes down on that offensive line, I could see them making a move and bringing somebody in. Obviously, the Bengals kind of short up their line, so I think they're in pretty good shape. The Colts are a team that I think could potentially use another guy.
What about Carolina?
Carolina, that's another one too that I think could use some depth for sure. I'm trying to think of who they've got right now. They did draft Aquanu, that big left tackle out of NC State. He's probably going to solidify that left tackle position. They've got Taylor Mouton at right tackle, but
if you got somebody, say like a Jason Peters in there, who could teach him, be the depth at left guard, left tackle, in case of an injury going down, and just being around these guys could be worth the price of admission or the price you're paying them, especially when you're trying to, I'm trying to make sure that Baker doesn't turn into Baker Bust down there and gets his butt just kicked every week.
No, I agree. I think Jason Peters is the best guy to bring in for that exact fact. A, he can play guard, he can play tackle. B, he's willing to help these kids. He's willing to train these guys. He did it last year in Chicago, and he did it the year before in Philadelphia. He is actually one guy who doesn't mind, sharing his wares and being that quasi coach on the line. Now, the one thing about the Panthers is that they do have some depth. They've got Deontay Brown, they've got Cameron Irving, they've got Austin Pleasance, and then they drafted my boy out of Knoxville Catholic High School, Cade Mays, in the 6th round. So they've got a little bit of depth down there in Carolina.
All right.
Let's talk about the pass rushers that are still out there, because there's some interesting names on this list. And there sure as hell is a lot of teams that still need a pass rusher. The one that really jumps out to me is JPP.
Yeah.
This is a guy who helped, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win a Super Bowl 2 years ago. He's only 33 years old, and I thought had a tremendous season last year. And he's sitting on the bench right now, waiting to get picked up. So I think somebody signs him sooner rather than later. Just a matter of who's got the cap room and who needs the most help. Another guy that really sticks out to me, he's not necessarily a pass rusher, but he is an outside linebacker, and that's Anthony Barr, the former Minnesota Viking. He's only 30 years old, and he's had several big-time seasons in Minnesota. I think somebody signs him as soon as camp gets underway. Some of these situations, you don't have to wait for an injury. Sometimes you get into camp, you talk to your, defensive ends coach, you talk to your outside linebackers coach, how are we looking? Not great. I'm not going to be able to get it done with these guys. I need somebody else. And that's when they'll come in. Another guy who's still out there is Carlos Dunlap, who, got signed to left Cincinnati and went to Seattle last year. Has been on the Seahawks roster the last couple of years. Kind of a cost-cutting move to get rid of him. I think he's still got something left in the tank. Ryan Kerrigan is a guy who's, he's pushing 33 years old, but as a situational player,
he was great with the Redskins for years.
And he's got some tread left on his tires too, man. I mean, if you think about his last couple of years, he didn't start last year in Philly. They had Derek Barnett, they had Graham. He just kind of came in situational, times to spell guys, or when guys were tired. He was more of a part-time player. So I think he's got some gas left in the tank. I think he will probably get signed. You got Everson Griffin, who I didn't realize this, but he's 34 years old. What he's got left, I don't know, but I could see him, somebody maybe taking a flyer on him. And then also one last guy that we could talk about is Carl Nassib, who played in Las Vegas. And, he just kind of got cut basically and didn't get re-signed because of numbers and because of the, pass rushers that I almost said Oakland, Las Vegas has now. He's another guy that somebody could bring in and potentially have some value or give some value to some teams.
I would find Kerrigan to be very, very intriguing if I was for the Giants even.
Yeah, and JPP, I think Pierre Paul. I still think he's got something left. I mean, I watched.
He definitely does.
You think about him playing last year. I mean, he. I know he's 33 years old, but this is a guy who played 12 games in 2021. I'm trying to think. I believe he had 9.5 sacks in 2020, the Super Bowl year. I don't know. I'd take a flyer on him if I had the
I
opportunity
mean,
to do
I'll
so.
tell you, when I go back to his rookie year, and he helped the Giants win the Super Bowl, and it looked like, oh my God, we have the defensive end for it. We have Justin Tuck's replacement,
Yep.
and then he has that firecracker accident or whatever, and it took him a while, but he's figured out how to play with that bum hand, and
Yep.
he's been an effective player. And I always liked JPP.
Oh yeah,
I
me
don't know
too.
if the Giants would take him back. I don't think they would. I think they would. Kerrigan kind of makes sense for the Giants. But I said to you last year, right after the season, I thought JPP, the Jets. I mean, he fit right in there.
Yeah. No, and they could be using a pass rush. I mean, think about this. When he first went to Tampa in 2018, he had 12 and a half sacks. He finished up 2019 with 8.5. Then he had 9.5 in the Super Bowl season during the regular year. Last year, his production dropped a little bit to 2.5 sacks, but he still had 3 tackles for loss and a couple QB hits. The age is starting to get to him, but this is a guy who could still get a little bit of production for you and also, help your team as you're trying to get some of these young guys on board.
And there's something to be said for karma. He's won. He's been on some Super Bowl winning teams, so he knows what it's like to win.
Yeah, he's won 2 Super Bowls with 2 different teams, and he's been a big factor in both of them.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like what Von Miller brings to a locker room now. Once they've won a Super Bowl, they kind of know how to go through the process. So
No doubt. One last position I want to talk about too before we move on here is the wide receiver position. There's still some guys out there. There's still some crafty veterans that are on the table for these guys. I mean, one guy in particular that I think about is Emmanuel Sanders. He played for Buffalo last year. Didn't realize this, but Emmanuel Sanders is 35 years old. Did you? I mean, I didn't
yeah,
realize that. I mean, pushing 35 at wideout is pretty ridiculous, and I guess that's why he's on the chopping block. But that's a guy who could come in and help your wide receiver room. Cole Beasley also played for Buffalo last year. Both those guys are still unsigned as we speak. Adam Humphries is on the table. Deshaun Jackson, Allen Hurns, Will Fuller, Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu. There's a lot of guys that are still out there who have done some pretty good things in this league.
yeah. I mean, I've always liked Cole Beasley. I mean, there are some good names there. I think Deshaun Jackson is kind of past his prime, and I don't know. Does he still have the speed he used to have? Does he? Can he go deep?
Yeah, I mean, he did it last year. I mean, if you think about it, he played for the Rams, for what, about 9 games, and then he went over to the Raiders. And so, this is a guy who still, when he played for the Rams, averaged almost 20 yards a catch.
In the right
Um,
situation, he can stretch the field for you. He can give you that long ball threat, especially if you got a quarterback that likes to work underneath.
yeah,
Somebody to make those safeties stay back. But he's got to get to the perfect situation. Beasley, I mean, at this point, he's a Julian Edelman type. Um, it's easy to pigeonhole him in there. He'd fit into a lot of offenses as their slot receiver. I could see him being fit in right then. Emmanuel Sanders, like you say, he's a little long in the tooth, smart as hell. He's another guy that can go into the slot. So there should be a lot of people, taking looks at these guys.
yeah, you got Will Fuller available. I mean, Will Fuller, when on the field, has been a hell of a wide receiver.
Yeah.
His problem has been staying healthy. I mean, that's why he's out on the street right now. He just can't seem to stay healthy for whatever reason. And another guy who's had some very productive years is T.Y. Hilton
Yeah,
from the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, this guy, he's only 32 years old, which, that's
always
no,
love Ty.
yeah, that's not a spring chicken by any stretch, but this is a guy who has gotten it done for a long time in Indianapolis, and he's also been a very good teammate. I mean, he has never caused any problems. He's never gotten in any trouble. He's always helped the younger guys. It's just, he's had some injury problems as well. He was only available for 10 games last year. He played in 9. I think he had 23 catches, but at 23 catches, he had over 300 yards and still had 3 touchdowns. So this is a dude who, if he's healthy, I think could help some of these teams.
Is the wide receiver position kind of going the way the running back position went about 10 years ago, where the NFL teams started thinking, man, we're going to have to spend so much money on our quarterbacks that it's better to have 5 or 6 average to good wide receivers than it is to have, 2 superstars, or one superstar that I got to pay max money to, like a Devontae Adams. I'd rather have a bunch of good wide receivers and say to my quarterback, make them great.
Yeah, it depends on which team you talk to. I mean, think about it. The Philadelphia Eagles thought it was important enough to give A.J. Brown over $115 million, and the Tennessee Titans didn't want to do it. So it just depends who you're dealing with. I mean, the wide receiver position, to me, has been one of the most evolved positions in the NFL. I mean, you think about it now, these guys are catching more and more passes. These guys are more and more developed as the years progress. I mean, they're playing football younger and younger. They're playing year round. I mean, some of these kids that are wide receivers, they're catching, 100, 120 passes a year in high school. Then they're playing 7-on-7 all off season in these competitive teams that play all over the country. Their offenses they're running are more sophisticated, and they're coming in ready to play more and more. I mean, if you think about it, back in the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s, guys would come in from the wide receiver position, and it would take them a year or two. I mean, there's the Randy Mosses, there's the guys that, would come in and have big rookie seasons. But for the most part, it took them a year or two to get the route running down, to get the tree concepts down, to get the offensive scheme down. But not anymore. I mean, now you're seeing Jamar Chase. Look what he did last year. Justin Jefferson as a rookie. These guys are coming in right away and just blowing it up. So I think one thing is that you're seeing these guys on the free agent list that are a little bit older, and that's because these guys that are coming in there's just more and more wide receivers that are available in the draft every year. And the position is evolved. Yeah, and these guys are more and more ready to play. Now, I do think it helps to have an old veteran to kind of show them how to get it done. Another guy who we didn't even mention, who is still on the table, and really, he's really only on the table because, once again, a lot of these guys, same issue. It's health. Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, as much as me and you are not the biggest OBJ fans, when he got in the field last year, he actually played pretty good for the Rams. I mean,
he played pretty good. He played pretty good, but like you and I talked about many times, the press just ate it up and tried to make him into something he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't the OBJ of his first 3 years where he was, putting up Randy Moss type numbers. He was the second option, and you had Cooper Kupp having one of maybe the 5 greatest, if not the greatest, wide receiver year in the history of the NFL. So he didn't have to be OBJ. But I mean, what just made me throw up was the fact that, the announcers and the pundits on the weekend making it, he caught 45 passes for 4 touchdowns. Those are pedestrian numbers. He was good, but that's not what you expect from a guy who has his reputation. So, and the other thing is he's coming off a major injury to the same knee. But I'm sure someone will pick him up and take a look at him.
Yeah, I mean, he really, tore it up in the playoffs and until he got hurt. He definitely showed flashes of being a guy who can get it done. It's just there's some teams that really, I think, need to take a hard look at these guys. I mean, the Titans, to me, really stand out. I mean, they let A.J. Brown walk. I understand all that. They drafted Treylon Burks in the first round, but they're really counting on him to be a starter day one. Well, he may not be ready. First off, he's had some off the field issues with asthma. He's had some injuries. You've got Robert Woods as well, who's also slated to be a starter. for the Titans, who tore his ACL last year and missed more than half the season. So you're counting on two guys who may or may not be ready when the season begins and may or may not be ready to produce. So I really think that the Titans need to add somebody, and I think they need to add somebody quick at the wide receiver position.
Well, of course, you don't want to wait till the last minute when all the better ones are gone and you're stuck taking one of the old guys living on reputation, but living on a prayer as well. So, I mean, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, there are some big names in there, but like we said, I mean, the only thing is, I think that you said it best. These guys are coming in evolved and experienced and ready to go in a lot of cases, and they're cheaper.
Yeah, no, they're definitely cheaper. Some of these guys, that's the reason that they're on the street as well, is either their injury history or they're wanting too much money. And it'll just kind of come down to whether or not they want to play bad enough or how much money they've saved. Because a couple of them may need cash really bad and will sign with the team for whatever. Another guy who's on this list that sticks out to me just because of where I am and where he's from, but that's Jawan Jennings, a dude who really, really played well last year for the 49ers. And I was unaware that he was a free agent. I thought he had already signed with the Niners, but it looks like he's on the street right now. And that was kind of surprising to me. I thought they had locked him up, but it looks like he's still on the street. Have you heard if he's been signed? I thought he was signed.
No, I didn't hear anything about him, really.
Okay. It says he's a free agent, but I was under the impression that the 49ers had locked him up. So we'll have to check on that.
Yeah, they could have. When that list might have been, you could have done it recently when you didn't hear about it. Any defensive backs, any running backs?
Yeah, there's quite a few defensive backs and running backs that are still out there. The running backs that I would look at and want to talk about is definitely David Johnson, who played for Houston last year. I thought he was done a long time ago, but he actually played pretty well last year for Houston. He's still available. You've got Devontae Booker, who played for your Giants for a little while last year.
He was a good guy coming in spots.
Yeah, Malcolm Brown is still on the street. Carlos Hyde, Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman, Peyton Barber, Corey Clement, Wayne Gallman. All those guys are on the street right now for running back position. You can get one of those guys. Some of those dudes will get signed because there will be injuries in camp. But when you're talking about the defensive back position, the population is a little less fruitful just because those guys are hard to come by.
Right.
You do have Joe Hayden on the street and Chris Harris and Janoris Jenkins. I call them the 33s because they're all 33 years old. Janoris Jenkins, Chris Harris, Joe Hayden, all three of those guys are 33 years old. Very productive careers. But I think all three of them still want good money, and that's why they're probably available.
Yeah, I like Jack Rabbit when he was with the Giants. A little bit, the ending of his time here wasn't that great, but that's when they were falling apart. So I can understand where he was coming from.
Yeah. You also got Jimmy Smith is still on the street. AJ Bouye, Vernon Hargraves, Josh Norman, Richard Sherman. Lots of guys that are still out there.
I thought Richard Sherman had retired.
You would think, but he has not. He's still trying to get on a squad and play, but I think it may be over for him.
He's going to be the minute he retires, he's going to be signed up by Fox or ESPN, and he's going to be taken on right away. I mean, that he's got his second career ready for him.
Yeah, if he can stay out of trouble. He did have that issue getting arrested, was it last year? So those guys are all available. We also have got Landon Collins, Tashawn Gibson, Nate Ebner, Chris Banjo, Tavon Wilson, Matthias Farley, Andrew Sendejo. All those guys are safeties that are still out there too. So
Collins is still relatively young. Isn't he like 31, 30?
He's 28.
Yeah, I mean,
28.
And he's a good player. I mean, he may not be the best cover safety, but he's one of those guys you can play up close to the line of scrimmage. He'd be a perfect nickelback or one of those in a dime where you could, come off the edge. But again, he's a guy who wants money. He's not going to come cheap.
Well, and Landon Collins, he's just a little bit more of a box guy than he is a coverage guy.
Yeah.
But those dudes are important sometimes when you're having stopping the run
in the right scheme. I mean, he can rush the passer too.
I would take Landon Collins right now. For the right amount of money. It just depends on what he's asking for and what kind of cap room you've got.
The thing is that when you're negotiating in a negotiation, people are going to bring up, well, you can't cover anybody, and they're going to try and drive him down. And one thing about Landon Collins is, I know just by watching him and listening to his interviews and stuff, the guy has a lot of pride and a lot of confidence, and he's not going to be easy to box into a corner. He knows the price he wants.
Yeah,
he's willing to sit out for it.
Now, there's one position here. I know we're up against it time-wise, but there's one position here that is stock full of dudes, and that's middle linebacker. Middle linebacker has been devalued in this league, just like running backs has. But there's a lot of guys that I would sign to my team right now. Joe Schobert, Anthony Hitchens, Dante Hightower, Danny Trevathan, A.J. Johnson, who's had a couple of tremendous seasons in Denver, John Bostic, Kevin Minter, Quan Alexander, who was, really good last year for New Orleans, L.J. Fort from Baltimore, he's coming off an injury, and Reggie Ragland. All those guys I would put on my roster if I had the need.
Yeah, the other thing is, like you said, though, it's a devalued position, and they're going to wait till the last minute to get these guys, and they're going to get the scraps off the table.
There's no doubt.
So, all right. So before we go, what do we got with man coverage this week?
Yeah, we're going to be doing a little NIL series where we're going to be talking about what the NIL is doing right now to college football, how some teams are benefiting from the NIL, how other teams are getting hurt. We're going to have Ryan McCalvey on the show. He's an assistant athletic director and director of compliance at a university. He used to work at Columbia in New York City and also St. John's. He was also on the one of the chief compliance administrators for the Ivy League. He's now working at Portland University, and he's going to talk to us a lot about how the NIL is being used to help athletes, how it's being used to get kids to come from high schools, and also how compliance figures into all this, and how the compliance offices, his job, he said, has basically completely changed. So we're going to have him on the show, and we're really going to break down this NIL and how it's affecting college football. All
right, and before we go, I just got one thing to just send out there to the world. I know it's attractive. I know as a Met fan you want to win a championship, but stop thinking about getting Juan Soto. Just don't do it. Don't do it. They're winning. The Mets are having a good year. Don't turn into the Yankees East.
No.
Don't need another $40 million player.
Please don't pay this guy $400 million. They're going to be paying him every year like Bobby Bonilla for the rest of time.
Especially when who knows what they have to give up. All right, everybody, have a good night and a good rest of the weekend. Stay cool above everything. Stay cool. And we will be back next week. Nate, have a good weekend. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bud. See you.